Opening, the illusion of the straight path. Welcome back to the channel, beautiful souls. Today we're going to explore one of the most profound and liberating truths that the Buddha ever taught. A truth that has the power to completely transform how you experience every setback, every disappointment, every unexpected turn in your life's journey. Before we begin, I want you to think about something for a moment. Close your eyes if you're in a safe space to do so. Think about your life right now. Are you where you thought you'd be 5 years ago? 10 years ago? For most of us, the answer is no. Life has taken us on a journey we never could have predicted. There have been detours, delays, closed doors, and unexpected turns. And if you're like most people, you probably spent a lot of energy resisting these detours, being frustrated by them, seeing them as obstacles or failures. But what if I told you that these detours weren't mistakes? What if every closed door, every delay, every seeming setback was actually perfectly orchestrated to lead you exactly where you needed to be? What if the universe, or life, or whatever you want to call the intelligence that guides existence, never makes mistakes? What if you could trust the process so completely that you could relax into life's unfolding, even when you don't understand it? This is what the Buddha taught, though not in these exact words. The Buddha understood something profound about the nature of existence, about cause and effect, about the interconnectedness of all things. He understood that what we perceive as random chaos is actually an intricate dance of causes and conditions, and that we're being guided, always, toward awakening, toward growth, toward exactly what we need. The title of today's video is Trust the Process. Even the detours lead to the destination. This isn't just motivational speaking or positive thinking. This is deep Buddhist wisdom about the nature of karma, the law of dependent origination, and the fundamental intelligence that permeates all of existence. By the end of this video, my hope is that you'll have a completely new relationship with uncertainty, with the unknown, with the twists and turns of your own journey. If you find value in what we share today, please consider subscribing to the channel and hitting that notification bell. It truly helps us continue bringing these ancient teachings into modern contexts. And please leave a comment sharing a time when a detour in your life led you to something better than you could have planned. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. Now, let's dive deep into this transformative teaching. We're going to explore what the Buddha really taught about trusting life's process, why detours are not only inevitable, but necessary, and how you can develop the kind of faith that allows you to move through uncertainty with grace, peace, and even excitement.
Chapter 1. The Buddha's Own Detour. Let's start with the Buddha's own story, because it's the perfect illustration of how detours lead to destinations we could never have planned. The man who would become the Buddha was born Prince Siddhartha Gautama. He was born into luxury, wealth, and privilege. His father, the king, wanted to protect him from all suffering, so he kept Siddhartha confined to the palace, surrounded only by youth, beauty, health, and pleasure. From any conventional perspective, Siddhartha had it all. He had wealth beyond measure. He had a beautiful wife and a newborn son. He was being groomed to become a powerful king. This was his path, his destination, his future, or so everyone thought. But something happened. Siddhartha ventured outside the palace walls and encountered what are known as the 4 sights: an old person, a sick person, a dead person, and a wandering ascetic. These sights shattered his comfortable worldview. He realized that suffering was universal, that everyone he loved would age, get sick, and die, that he himself would age, get sick, and die. The path that had been laid out for him, kingship, pleasure, conventional success, suddenly felt empty and meaningless. So he did something radical. He left. In the middle of the night, he walked away from his palace, his wife, his newborn son, his inheritance, everything.
To everyone around him, this looked like a catastrophic detour. His father was devastated, his wife was abandoned, the kingdom lost its heir. By all conventional measures, Siddhartha was throwing his life away. He spent the next 6 years wandering, practicing extreme asceticism, starving himself, torturing his body, trying to find liberation through self-denial. And after 6 years of this, he was no closer to enlightenment. He was just weak, emaciated, and still suffering. This path, too, seemed like a detour, a dead end, a mistake. Finally, weak and discouraged, he sat down under a Bodhi tree and made a vow. He would not move from that spot until he understood the nature of suffering and the path to liberation. And there, after a night of deep meditation, he awakened. He became the Buddha, the awakened one. Now here's the profound truth. If Siddhartha had stayed on his original path, he would have become a king. He probably would have been a good king. He would have had a comfortable life, but he would never have discovered the truths that have now liberated millions of people across thousands of years. His detour, leaving the palace, the years of asceticism, the failures and frustrations, all of it was necessary. All of it led to a destination infinitely more valuable than kingship. The Buddha himself was living proof that the detours are part of the path. The detours are the path. Without them, we never arrive at our true destination. We only arrive at the limited destination our small, fearful, conditioned self had planned. Think about that for a moment. The Buddha's story is telling us something crucial. The life you've planned based on your current understanding and your current level of consciousness is always going to be smaller than the life that wants to unfold through you. Your job isn't to force life to conform to your plans. Your job is to trust the intelligence of life itself, to trust the process, even when, especially when, it takes you on detours you never expected. This is the first great lesson in trusting the process. Understand that what looks like a detour might actually be a direct path to a destination you're not yet capable of imagining. Your limited perspective can't see what the universe can see. Your planning mind can't orchestrate what life's intelligence can orchestrate. The Buddha taught about this through the concept of dependent origination, or pratitya samutpada. This is the teaching that everything arises in dependence on multiple causes and conditions. Nothing happens in isolation. Everything is connected to everything else in an incomprehensibly complex web of causation. When you look at your life from this perspective, you realize that every single thing that has happened, every success, every failure, every meeting, every loss, has been the result of countless causes and conditions coming together in exactly that moment. And here's what's even more profound. Those events are now causes and conditions for everything that will happen in your future. The job you didn't get is creating the conditions for a better job you can't yet see. The relationship that ended is creating the conditions for growth you couldn't have achieved otherwise. The illness is creating the conditions for healing and wisdom. The financial loss is creating the conditions for different priorities and deeper values. You can't see this while you're in it. When you're going through a detour, it just feels like you're lost, like you've failed, like you're wasting time. But the Buddha is asking you to trust something. There are no wrong turns. There is only the unfolding of karma, of cause and effect, leading you exactly where you need to go. This doesn't mean everything happens for a reason in some predetermined way. It means everything that happens becomes the reason for what happens next. And if you can trust this process, you can relax into it. You can stop fighting reality. You can stop exhausting yourself trying to control every outcome. You can start flowing with life instead of against it. The Buddha's own detour from prince to wanderer to awakened teacher shows us that the path to our highest potential is never straight. It winds, it doubles back, it seems to go nowhere for long stretches. But every step, every seeming wrong turn is necessary.
Every experience is teaching you something, preparing you for something, shaping you into someone who can handle the destination that's actually meant for you.
Chapter 2. The Nature of Resistance and Why We Fight the Detours. Now, let's explore why detours are so difficult for us, why we resist them so fiercely, and what the Buddha taught about this resistance. Because understanding your resistance is the first step to releasing it. Human beings have a deep need for control and certainty. This need comes from our evolutionary biology. Our ancestors survived by being able to predict and control their environment. Those who could anticipate danger, plan ahead, and create safety were more likely to survive and pass on their genes. So we've inherited this drive for certainty, for control, for predictability. The problem is that life is fundamentally uncertain. The Buddha identified this as one of the 3 marks of existence, anicca, or impermanence. Everything changes. Nothing stays the same. Nothing is permanent. The job you have today might not exist tomorrow. The relationship that feels rock solid might shift. Your health, your circumstances, your entire life situation, all of it is in constant flux. So we're biological creatures programmed to seek certainty, living in a reality that is fundamentally uncertain. This creates tremendous suffering. We make plans, and when life doesn't conform to those plans, we suffer. We create expectations, and when reality doesn't meet those expectations, we suffer. We imagine how things should be, and when they're not that way, we suffer. The Buddha called this dukkha, suffering or dissatisfaction, and he taught that the root cause of dukkha is tanha, which is usually translated as craving or attachment, but might be better understood as the mind's compulsive tendency to grasp, to control, to demand that reality be different than it is. When you're facing a detour in your life, when you've been laid off from your job, when your relationship has ended, when your health has failed, when your business has collapsed, when your plans have fallen apart, your mind immediately goes into resistance mode. This shouldn't be happening. This is wrong. This is a mistake. I need to fix this. I need to get back on track. This is wasting my time. All of this resistance is suffering, and it's suffering you're adding on to whatever challenging circumstances you're actually facing. The circumstances themselves are just circumstances, neutral in a sense. But your judgment of them, your resistance to them, your story about how they shouldn't be happening, that's where the real suffering comes from. The Buddha taught a radical acceptance of reality, not passive resignation, but active, clear-eyed recognition of what is actually happening in this moment. He taught that when you stop fighting with reality, when you stop demanding that this moment be different than it is, suffering decreases dramatically. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're driving to an important meeting and you hit unexpected traffic. You have 2 choices in how you relate to this situation. Choice 1, you can resist it. You can grip the steering wheel, curse the traffic, catastrophize about what will happen if you're late, blame the city planners, get angry at other drivers, work yourself into a state of stress and anxiety. Choice 2, you can accept it. You can acknowledge, there is traffic. I don't control traffic. I will arrive when I arrive. Getting stressed doesn't make the traffic move faster. I can use this time to breathe, to listen to something interesting, to be present. Same external situation, completely different internal experience. The difference is acceptance versus resistance. And notice, the acceptance doesn't mean you don't care or that you don't take action. You might still call ahead to let people know you'll be late. You might still navigate to find an alternate route if one exists. But you're taking those actions from a place of clear response rather than panicked reaction. Now expand this to the bigger detours in your life.
You lost your job. You can resist this reality, spend months in bitterness, resentment, victimhood, shame, or you can accept it. This happened. It's painful. And now what? What's actually here to do? What might this be opening up? How can I respond skillfully to this new reality? The Buddha taught a radical acceptance of reality, not passive resignation, but active, clear-eyed recognition of what is actually happening in this moment. He taught that when you stop fighting with reality, when you stop demanding that this moment be different than it is, suffering decreases dramatically. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're driving to an important meeting and you hit unexpected traffic. You have two choices in how you relate to this situation. Choice 1, you can resist it. You can grip the steering wheel, curse the traffic, catastrophize about what will happen if you're late, blame the city planners, get angry at other drivers, work yourself into a state of stress and anxiety. Choice 2, you can accept it. You can acknowledge, there is traffic. I don't control traffic. I will arrive when I arrive. Getting stressed doesn't make the traffic move faster. I can use this time to breathe, to listen to something interesting, to be present. Same external situation, completely different internal experience. The difference is acceptance versus resistance. And notice, the acceptance doesn't mean you don't care or that you don't take action. You might still call ahead to let people know you'll be late. You might still navigate to find an alternate route if one exists. But you're taking those actions from a place of clear response rather than panicked reaction. Now expand this to the bigger detours in your life. You lost your job. You can resist this reality, spend months in bitterness, resentment, victimhood, shame, or you can accept it. This happened. It's painful. And now what? What's actually here to do? What might this be opening up? How can I respond skillfully to this new reality? The Buddha taught a radical acceptance of reality, not passive resignation, but active, clear-eyed recognition of what is actually happening in this moment. He taught that when you stop fighting with reality, when you stop demanding that this moment be different than it is, suffering decreases dramatically. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're driving to an important meeting and you hit unexpected traffic. You have two choices in how you relate to this situation. Choice 1, you can resist it. You can grip the steering wheel, curse the traffic, catastrophize about what will happen if you're late, blame the city planners, get angry at other drivers, work yourself into a state of stress and anxiety. Choice 2, you can accept it. You can acknowledge, there is traffic. I don't control traffic. I will arrive when I arrive. Getting stressed doesn't make the traffic move faster. I can use this time to breathe, to listen to something interesting, to be present. Same external situation, completely different internal experience. The difference is acceptance versus resistance. And notice, the acceptance doesn't mean you don't care or that you don't take action. You might still call ahead to let people know you'll be late. You might still navigate to find an alternate route if one exists. But you're taking those actions from a place of clear response rather than panicked reaction. Now expand this to the bigger detours in your life. You lost your job. You can resist this reality, spend months in bitterness, resentment, victimhood, shame, or you can accept it. This happened. It's painful. And now what? What's actually here to do? What might this be opening up? How can I respond skillfully to this new reality? The Buddha taught a radical acceptance of reality, not passive resignation, but active, clear-eyed recognition of what is actually happening in this moment. He taught that when you stop fighting with reality, when you stop demanding that this moment be different than it is, suffering decreases dramatically. Let me give you a concrete example. Imagine you're driving to an important meeting and you hit unexpected traffic. You have two choices in how you relate to this situation. Choice 1, you can resist it. You can grip the steering wheel, curse the traffic, catastrophize about what will happen if you're late, blame the city planners, get angry at other drivers, work yourself into a state of stress and anxiety. Choice 2, you can accept it. You can acknowledge, there is traffic. I don't control traffic. I will arrive when I arrive. Getting stressed doesn't make the traffic move faster. I can use this time to breathe, to listen to something interesting, to be present. Same external situation, completely different internal experience. The difference is acceptance versus resistance. And notice, the acceptance doesn't mean you don't care or that you don't take action. You might still call ahead to let people know you'll be late. You might still navigate to find an alternate route if one exists. But you're taking those actions from a place of clear response rather than panicked reaction. Now expand this to the bigger detours in your life.
Chapter 3. The Hidden Gifts in Every Detour. Now let's explore something beautiful. Every detour carries hidden gifts, teachings, and opportunities that you could never receive on a straight path. The Buddha taught that difficulties are not obstacles to enlightenment, they're vehicles for enlightenment. Let's understand why this is true and how to recognize the gifts in your detours. First, detours develop qualities in you that ease and comfort never could. Think about the qualities we most admire in people: resilience, compassion, wisdom, patience, courage, humility, depth of character. None of these develop when life is easy and goes according to plan. These qualities are forged in the fire of difficulty. They're sculpted by challenges. They emerge from detours. When you lose a job, you might develop resilience and creativity you never knew you had. When a relationship ends, you might discover independence and self-sufficiency. When you face illness, you might cultivate patience and presence. When your plans fall apart, you might learn surrender and trust. These aren't consolation prizes. These are the actual treasures of human development. The Buddha himself taught that there are what he called the 8 worldly winds, 4 pairs of opposites that everyone experiences: pleasure and pain, gain and loss, praise and blame, fame and disrepute. He taught that the wise person remains equanimous in the face of all 8, neither clinging to the pleasant ones nor pushing away the unpleasant ones. But you can only develop this equanimity by experiencing both sides of each pair. You can't learn non-attachment to pleasure if you only experience pleasure. You can't develop resilience in the face of loss if you only experience gain. The detours, the times you experience the less pleasant side of these pairs, are teaching you equanimity. They're training you to remain centered regardless of external circumstances. This is one of the highest attainments in Buddhism, and it can only be developed through direct experience of life's ups and downs, its straight paths, and its detours. Second, detours often redirect you toward your true purpose or calling. There's a beautiful concept in Buddhism called Dharma, which has multiple meanings, but one of them refers to your unique path, your life's work, your particular way of contributing to the world. Most people don't discover their Dharma on a straight, comfortable path. They discover it through detours, failures, and unexpected redirections. Think about how many successful people have stories like this. I was on track to become a lawyer, but then I got sick, and during my recovery I started painting, and now I'm an artist. Or, I was building a corporate career, but then I got laid off and started a nonprofit that became my life's work. Or, I thought I knew what I wanted, but when that door closed, a completely different door opened, and walking through it changed everything. The detour forced a change of direction that revealed something truer, something more aligned with who they really are. The straight path was leading toward who they thought they should be. The detour led toward who they actually are. The Buddha taught about this in his discussions of right livelihood, one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. Right livelihood isn't just about earning money ethically. It's about finding work that aligns with your deepest values and contributes to reducing suffering in the world. Sometimes you have to take several wrong jobs, experience several career detours before you discover what right livelihood means for you specifically. I want to share a story that illustrates this perfectly. There was once a master potter in ancient China who spent decades perfecting his craft. He became famous for his beautiful, flawless pottery. But then, in his old age, his hands developed tremors. He could no longer create the perfect, symmetrical pieces he was known for. At first, he was devastated. This seemed like a tragic detour, an end to his life's work. But then something shifted. He began to work with the tremors instead of against them. The pieces he created became asymmetrical, unexpected, unique. They had a life, organic quality that his perfect pieces had never had. And these imperfect pieces became even more valued than his earlier work. They were recognized as containing a deeper truth, a more profound beauty. The detour of his trembling hands led him to a destination more authentic than anything he could have planned. The loss of control led to greater art. The seeming end of his career led to its fulfillment. This is what detours do. They force you to let go of control, to release your rigid plans, to be flexible and adaptive. And in that flexibility, in that surrender, you often discover something more authentic, more alive, more true to your essential nature than anything you could have controlled your way into. Third, detours create connection and compassion. When you go through difficulties, when you face detours and setbacks, you develop empathy for others who are struggling. You become softer, more understanding, less judgmental. You realize that everyone is fighting battles you know nothing about. You become more human. The Buddha taught that compassion, karuna, is one of the four immeasurables, along with loving kindness, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. But genuine compassion can only arise from understanding suffering intimately. If your life has been easy and straight, you might have sympathy for those who suffer, but you won't have deep compassion. Deep compassion comes from knowing suffering yourself, from having been lost in your own detours. This is why some of the most compassionate healers, therapists, teachers, and helpers are people who have been through significant struggles themselves. Their detours became the foundation for their ability to help others. The addiction recovery counselor who is in recovery themselves, the grief counselor who has experienced profound loss, the life coach who rebuilt their life from rock bottom. Their detours weren't wasted time, they were preparation for their life's work. Fourth, detours teach you to trust yourself. When you successfully navigate a detour, when you face uncertainty, make it through difficulty, adapt to unexpected changes, and emerge on the other side, you prove to yourself that you're capable. You build self-trust. You know that whatever happens, you'll figure it out. You'll adapt. You'll survive. You'll grow. This knowing allows you to take risks, to try new things, to step into the unknown with less fear, because you've done it before. You've been through detours and you've made it through.
The Buddha taught about this quality as well. He called it adi moksha, which might be translated as confidence or conviction. But it's not confidence based on ego or arrogance. It's confidence based on direct experience. You've walked through the fire, and you know you can do it again if you need to. This kind of confidence is unshakable because it's rooted in truth, in lived experience, not in wishful thinking. Fifth, detours often save you from destinations that weren't actually right for you, even though you thought they were. Think about this carefully. How many times in your life have you wanted something desperately, pursued it with everything you had, and then didn't get it, only to realize later that not getting it was a gift? Maybe you didn't get into your dream school, but the school you went to instead is where you met your best friend or found your passion. Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted, but the job you got instead gave you skills you needed.
Maybe the relationship that ended made room for a better relationship to enter your life. From your limited perspective in the moment, the closed door looks like a disaster. But from the perspective of your whole life, looking back, you can often see that the closed door was protecting you from a path that would have taken you away from your highest good. The Buddha taught about this through the concept of karma and its fruits. Actions have consequences, but those consequences unfold over time in ways we can't always predict or understand. Sometimes what looks like bad karma, a detour, a loss, is actually good karma unfolding, protection, redirection. You can't judge karma by its immediate appearance. You have to trust the larger pattern. There's a famous Taoist story that illustrates this perfectly, and it's very much in harmony with Buddhist teachings. A farmer's horse runs away. His neighbor says, "What bad luck?" The farmer says, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returns with 3 wild horses. The neighbor says, "What good luck?" The farmer says, "Maybe." The farmer's son tries to tame one of the wild horses and breaks his leg. "What bad luck," says the neighbor. "Maybe," says the farmer. Then war breaks out, and all young men are conscripted, but the farmer's son is spared because of his broken leg. "What good luck," says the neighbor. "Maybe," says the farmer. The point of this story is that you can't judge whether something is good or bad luck, whether it's a blessing or a curse, whether it's the right path or a detour, because you don't know what it's leading to. You don't know what would have happened if things had gone differently. You only know what is actually happening, and even that you can't fully understand in the moment. So the wise response is to hold everything lightly, to trust that whatever is happening is part of a larger pattern you can't see, to respond skillfully to what's actually in front of you, rather than exhausting yourself judging whether it's good or bad, right or wrong, on track or off track. The Buddha taught that clinging and aversion, grasping at what we want and pushing away what we don't want, are the root of suffering. Detours teach us to release both clinging and aversion. We learn that we can't always get what we want, and that's okay. We learn that we sometimes have to experience what we don't want, and that's okay too. We learn to work with reality as it is, rather than demanding it be different. This doesn't make you passive or resigned. It makes you flexible, adaptive, creative. You're like water, flowing around obstacles, finding the path of least resistance, eventually making your way to the ocean no matter how many detours you have to take. Sixth, detours create space for what's meant to arrive. Think about it. If your life was completely full of the things you'd planned, if everything had gone according to your agenda, there would be no space for anything new, anything unexpected, anything unplanned. Detours create openings. They create empty space. And in that empty space, something you never imagined becomes possible. In Buddhism, there's a concept called shunyata, usually translated as emptiness, but better understood as openness or spaciousness. It's the idea that things don't have a fixed, permanent essence. They're fluid, open, full of potential. When you release your grip on how things should be, when you allow detours to create space in your life, you're embodying shunyata. You're becoming open to possibilities you couldn't see before. Maybe the job you lost created space for a business you'll start. Maybe the relationship that ended created space for self-discovery. Maybe the illness created space for slowing down and reprioritizing. Maybe the financial loss created space for examining your values around money. The detour cleared out what was no longer serving you and created space for what wants to emerge. This requires trust. You have to trust that the empty space won't stay empty forever, that something will emerge to fill it, that you don't have to force or control what that something will be. You have to trust the process of death and rebirth that's constantly happening in life. Every breath is a cycle of death and birth. You exhale, releasing the old breath. There's a gap, a space of emptiness. Then you inhale, receiving the new breath. If you tried to hold on to the old breath, if you refused to exhale because you didn't trust that the next breath would come, you'd suffocate. You have to trust the cycle. You have to trust the space between breaths. Detours are like that space between breaths. They're the exhale, the letting go, the death of what was. They feel scary because you're in the gap, the empty space. But if you can trust, if you can remain present in the gap without panicking, the inhale comes, the new beginning emerges. Life continues, but in a new form, on a new path.
Chapter 4. The Practice of Surrender and Letting Go. Now we come to what might be the most challenging and most essential aspect of trusting the process, the practice of surrender and letting go. This is where Buddhist teaching gets very practical, offering specific techniques and perspectives that can help you release control and flow with life's detours rather than fighting against them. First, let's be clear about what surrender means in Buddhist context, because it's often misunderstood. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean becoming passive or resigned. It doesn't mean you stop trying or stop caring. Buddhist surrender is active, engaged, and intelligent. It means surrendering your attachment to outcomes while maintaining your commitment to wise action. The Buddha taught about this in his discussion of the middle way and right effort. Right effort is one of the elements of the Noble Eightfold Path. It means you make effort, you try, you act, but you do so without strain, without forcing, without attachment to results. You do your best, and then you release the outcome. Think of it like planting a garden. You prepare the soil, plant the seeds, water them, provide sunlight. You do everything within your power to create conditions for growth, but you don't stand over the seeds demanding that they grow faster. You don't dig them up every day to check on their progress. You don't get angry at the weather when it doesn't cooperate with your timeline. You do your part, and then you surrender to the larger process of nature. You trust that if you've planted good seeds in good soil and provided proper care, something will grow, even if it doesn't grow exactly when or how you expect it. This is the balance the Buddha taught, diligent effort combined with patient surrender. You act and then you release. You try and then you trust. You do your best and then you let go of your grip on how it should turn out. One of the most powerful practices for cultivating this kind of surrender is meditation, specifically mindfulness meditation. When you sit in meditation, you're training yourself in the art of letting go. Thoughts arise, you notice them and let them go. Sensations arise, you notice them and let them go. Plans, worries, memories arise, you notice them and let them go. Over and over, you practice the movement of noticing and releasing, noticing and releasing. This trains your mind to hold things lightly. You begin to realize that thoughts and experiences arise on their own. You don't have as much control over them as you thought. And you realize that you don't need to hold on to them. You can let them come and let them go. This realization is profoundly liberating because it reveals that you don't need to control everything to be okay. You can simply be present with whatever arises without needing to fix it, change it, or make it different. When you take this training from the meditation cushion into daily life, you begin to relate differently to detours. A detour arises, you notice it. You feel the resistance, the disappointment, the fear. You notice these emotions. And then, rather than getting swept away by them or fighting against the situation, you practice letting go. You release your grip on how it should have been. You open to what actually is. You ask yourself, given that this is happening, what's the wise response? What's actually here to do?
The Buddha taught a specific practice for working with difficulty that's very relevant here. It's called the RAIN practice, though this acronym was developed later by Western Buddhist teachers to make the teaching more accessible. RAIN stands for recognize what is happening, allow the experience to be there just as it is, investigate with kindness, natural awareness, non-identification. Let's apply this to a detour. Say you've just been passed over for a promotion you really wanted. You're feeling angry, disappointed, embarrassed. Here's how you might work with this. Recognize. Notice what's happening. I'm feeling angry. I'm disappointed. My stomach is tight. My mind is spinning stories about how unfair this is. Allow. Let the feelings be there without trying to push them away or suppress them. It's okay to feel disappointed. This is a natural response. I don't have to make these feelings wrong or bad. They're just here. Investigate. With gentle curiosity, explore the experience more deeply. What am I really afraid of? Is it about the money? The status? What I think this says about me? What am I believing about myself right now? Natural awareness. Step back into the awareness that's observing all of this. You're not the anger. You're not the story. You're not the thought, I'm not good enough. You're the awareness in which all these experiences are arising. From this place of awareness, you have perspective. You can respond rather than react. This practice doesn't make the detour disappear. You still didn't get the promotion, but it completely changes your relationship with the detour. Instead of being consumed by resistance and suffering, you're present with what is. You're working with reality rather than fighting against it. And from this place, you can see more clearly what your wise next steps might be. Another crucial practice for developing surrender is gratitude, which we touched on earlier, but want to explore more deeply here. Gratitude is a form of surrender because it's accepting what is and finding value in it. When you practice gratitude in the midst of a detour, you're not denying that it's difficult or pretending everything's perfect. You're choosing to notice what's still good, what's still working, what you can still appreciate even in challenging circumstances. The Buddha taught about mudita, often translated as sympathetic joy or appreciative joy. It's the practice of finding joy in what already exists rather than only in what might come in the future. When you're in a detour, mudita practice means looking for what you can appreciate right here, right now, rather than only focusing on where you wish you were. Maybe you lost your job, but you're grateful for your health, for friends who support you, for the skills you've developed, for the freedom to explore new directions. The detour is real and challenging, but it's not the only thing that's real. When you practice gratitude, you're acknowledging the fullness of your reality, not just the part that's difficult. This practice shifts your energy. Resistance and complaint contract your energy. Gratitude expands it. When your energy is expansive, you're more creative, more open to possibilities, more able to see opportunities you would miss if you were contracted in resistance. There's also a powerful practice in Buddhism around working with fear, which is usually what's underneath resistance to detours. We resist detours because we're afraid of uncertainty, afraid of loss, afraid of failure, afraid we won't be okay. The Buddha taught that fear is natural, but that we can work with it skillfully rather than being controlled by it. One practice is to investigate your fear directly. When you notice fear arising around a detour, you can ask yourself, what am I actually afraid of? What's the worst that could happen? And if that happened, could I handle it? Usually, when you investigate fear directly, you discover that what you're actually afraid of is not the actual circumstances, but your thoughts about the circumstances. You're not actually afraid of losing your job. You're afraid of what you think losing your job means about you. You're not actually afraid of being single. You're afraid of the story you tell yourself about being alone. When you separate the actual circumstances from your thoughts about the circumstances, fear loses some of its power.
You realize that the circumstances are just circumstances, neutral in a sense. It's your interpretation, your story, your beliefs about what these circumstances mean that creates the fear. The Buddha taught this through his analysis of the second arrow. When you experience pain, the first arrow, that's challenging enough. But then the mind shoots a second arrow, the story about the pain, the judgment of it, the fear about what it means, the resistance to it. This second arrow is actually what creates most of our suffering. The detour itself is the first arrow. Your resistance, fear, and story about the detour is the second arrow.
When you practice mindfulness, you learn to see the second arrow as it's happening. You catch yourself in the middle of the story. This shouldn't be happening. This means I'm a failure. My life is falling apart. I'll never recover from this. And you can recognize, oh, these are thoughts. These are the second arrow. These are optional. I don't have to believe these thoughts. This doesn't eliminate pain or challenge, but it dramatically reduces suffering. You're working with reality as it is, rather than fighting with your story about reality. Another essential practice for surrender is connecting with impermanence on a visceral level. The Buddha taught that truly understanding impermanence, not just intellectually, but in your bones, is liberating. When you deeply know that everything changes, that nothing lasts, you hold everything more lightly. You don't cling as desperately to pleasant experiences because you know they'll change. You don't resist unpleasant experiences as fiercely because they'll change too. A powerful way to connect with impermanence is to practice awareness of change in your immediate experience. Right now, as you're reading or listening to this, notice how everything is changing. Your breath is changing. Sounds are arising and passing away. Sensations in your body are shifting. Thoughts are appearing and disappearing. The light is changing. Even things that seem solid and stable are actually in constant motion at the molecular level. When you really attune to this flow, this constant change, you realize that trying to hold on to anything is like trying to grab water. You can't stop the flow. You can only flow with it. This realization naturally leads to surrender, not defeated surrender, but wise surrender. You're aligning yourself with the fundamental nature of reality rather than fighting against it. The Buddha also taught about the practice of refuges, taking refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. In the context of trusting the process through detours, this practice can be understood as taking refuge in the Buddha, the possibility of awakening, the potential for wisdom and compassion that exists within you and all beings. When you're in a detour, you can remember that this capacity for awakening is still here. The detour doesn't destroy it. It might even be revealing it. The Dharma, the truth, the teachings, the way things actually work. You can take refuge in the reality that everything arises from causes and conditions, that everything changes, that suffering has causes that can be understood and addressed. These truths remain stable even when your circumstances are unstable. The Sangha, community, connection, the reality that you're not alone. Even in detours, even when you feel isolated, you're part of the larger web of humanity. Others have walked through similar struggles. You can reach out, ask for help, offer help. Connection is always available. Taking refuge is a practice of remembering what's reliable when everything else feels unreliable. It's anchoring yourself in truth when circumstances are shifting. This provides tremendous stability and allows you to move through detours with more grace. Let's also talk about the practice of non-doing, or Wu Wei in Taoist terms, which is very compatible with Buddhist teaching. Sometimes the wisest response to a detour is to not do anything, to wait, to rest, to allow things to unfold rather than forcing action. Western culture is very oriented toward doing, fixing, achieving, making things happen. But sometimes the detour is asking you to simply be, to trust that not all progress requires action. The Buddha himself modeled this when he sat under the Bodhi tree. After years of striving, seeking, practicing, he simply sat. He stopped doing and started being. And in that profound stillness, awakening arose. When you're in a detour, especially one that feels confusing or overwhelming, there's wisdom in pausing, in not immediately trying to fix it or figure it out or force your way forward. Sometimes you need to sit with the uncertainty, marinate in the not knowing, allow the situation to reveal itself more fully before you take action. This requires tremendous trust. It feels counterintuitive to our action-oriented minds. But often premature action based on fear and resistance creates more problems, whereas patient presence, allowing things to clarify naturally, leads to wiser action when the time is right. There's a beautiful teaching story about this. A student asked a Zen master, "What should I do when I'm confused and don't know which way to go?" The master replied, "When you don't know which way to go, don't go." This isn't about permanent paralysis. It's about having the wisdom to wait for clarity rather than forcing action from a place of confusion and fear. In your detours, you can practice this. When you genuinely don't know what to do, when the way forward isn't clear, you can choose to not force it, to wait, to be present with not knowing, to trust that clarity will emerge when the time is right. This is a high level of surrender, surrendering even your need to know right now what comes next. Finally, let's talk about the practice of reframing. While it's important to accept reality as it is, it's also true that how we interpret reality matters. Two people can experience the same detour and interpret it completely differently. One sees it as a disaster. The other sees it as an adventure. One sees it as evidence of their failure. The other sees it as an opportunity for growth. Same external reality, completely different internal experience. The Buddha was very clear that our perceptions shape our experience. He taught, "We are what we think. All that we are arises with our thoughts. With our thoughts, we make the world." So while we're accepting what is, we can also choose how we relate to what is, how we interpret it, what meaning we make from it. This is where reframing comes in. When you're in a detour, you can ask yourself, what's another way to look at this? What might this be teaching me? How might this actually be serving me, even though it doesn't feel good? What would it look like to trust that this detour is exactly what I need right now? These questions don't deny the difficulty, but they open up new perspectives. They help you see possibilities you might miss if you're locked into one interpretation. They align you with trust rather than fear. A powerful reframe is to see every detour as a teaching. The Buddha taught that the whole world is your teacher if you're paying attention. Every experience, pleasant or unpleasant, is showing you something about the nature of mind, the nature of reality, the nature of your own patterns and habits. When you see detours as teachings rather than as punishments or mistakes, you can extract wisdom from them. You can grow from them. They stop being meaningless suffering and become meaningful education. Another reframe is to see detours as protection. Maybe this closed door is protecting you from a path that would have led to something worse. Maybe this delay is giving something time to develop that needs to develop before you can move forward. Maybe this challenge is preparing you for something you'll face later. You don't know. You can't see the whole pattern, but you can choose to trust that there's intelligence in what's unfolding, even when you can't see it. These practices, meditation, the RAIN practice, gratitude, investigating fear, connecting with impermanence, taking refuge, non-doing, and reframing, are all tools for developing the kind of trust that allows you to move through detours with grace. They're not about forcing yourself to feel positive or denying reality. They're about developing a different relationship with reality, one that's rooted in wisdom and trust rather than in fear and control.
Chapter 5. Karma,
causation, and the intelligence of life. Now, we need to go deeper into the Buddhist understanding of how life actually works, because when you understand this, trust becomes much easier. The Buddha taught about karma and causation in a way that's often misunderstood in popular culture, so let's clarify what he actually said and how it applies to trusting the process through detours. First, karma is not fate. It's not some predetermined destiny that you can't change. The word karma simply means action. It refers to the law of cause and effect, the principle that actions have consequences. What you do, what you think, what you intend, all of this creates causes that will have effects in your life, but it's not linear or simple. It's incredibly complex. The Buddha taught about dependent origination, or pratitya samutpada, which is the understanding that everything arises in dependence on multiple causes and conditions. Nothing exists in isolation. Nothing has a single cause. Everything in your life right now is the result of countless causes and conditions coming together. And everything happening right now is creating causes and conditions for what will unfold in your future. When you're experiencing a detour, it's not because of one thing you did wrong. It's not punishment from the universe. It's the natural unfolding of causes and conditions, most of which are completely beyond your awareness or control. This is actually liberating because it means you don't have to figure out exactly what you did to deserve this detour. You don't have to blame yourself or spend energy trying to identify the one mistake you made that caused this. Instead, you can simply recognize this is what's arising right now from the incomprehensibly complex web of causation. And my response to this situation is creating new causes and conditions for what will unfold next. So where I actually have power is not in controlling or understanding all the causes that led to this moment, but in responding wisely to this moment. This is tremendously empowering. You're not a victim of karma. You're a participant in karma. You're always creating new causes through your thoughts, words, and actions. The detour you're experiencing arose from past causes, yes, but how you respond to it is creating your future. You have agency. You have choice. You're not stuck. The Buddha also taught that karma ripens at different rates. Some actions have immediate consequences. Others don't manifest their effects until much later, sometimes years or even lifetimes later, according to traditional teaching. This means that sometimes good karma leads to difficult consequences in the short term, while harmful actions might seem to be rewarded in the short term. But over the long term, the law of karma is reliable. Wholesome actions lead to well-being, and unwholesome actions lead to suffering. This is relevant to detours because sometimes what looks like bad karma, a detour, a loss, a difficulty, is actually good karma from the past ripening in a way you don't recognize. Maybe you made a wise choice years ago, and this detour is actually the fruit of that choice, redirecting you away from something harmful and towards something beneficial. You just can't see it yet because you're too close to it, too caught up in the immediate discomfort. There's also the teaching of skillful means, or upaya. This is the understanding that the universe, or life, or dharma, whatever you want to call the intelligence that orchestrates existence, uses whatever means necessary to guide beings towards awakening. Sometimes it uses pleasant experiences. Sometimes it uses difficult ones. Sometimes it uses rewards. Sometimes it uses challenges. Whatever will actually serve your growth and evolution is what arises. From this perspective, detours are not random bad luck. They're skillful means. They're exactly what you need in this moment for your development, even though they don't feel good and you didn't ask for them. This requires tremendous trust. Trust that there's an intelligence at work that's wiser than your limited planning mind, that can see farther than you can see, that's guiding you to your highest potential, even when the path doesn't make sense to you. Let me be clear, this is not the same as saying everything happens for a reason in some predetermined way. It's more subtle than that. It's saying that everything that happens becomes meaningful when you work with it wisely. The detour doesn't have inherent meaning, but you can extract meaning from it. You can allow it to teach you, shape you, redirect you. In this way, the detour does serve a purpose, not because it was predetermined to do so, but because you've chosen to use it that way. The Buddha taught that we live in a universe governed by natural law, not by a personal deity making decisions about our lives. The laws are impersonal but reliable. Gravity works the same for everyone. Cause and effect works the same for everyone. When you align yourself with these natural laws rather than fighting against them, life flows more smoothly. When you resist these laws, you suffer. One of these natural laws is change. Everything changes. This means that detours are inevitable. You will experience unexpected turns, closed doors, plan disruptions, losses, and challenges. This is not because you're doing something wrong. It's because you're alive in a changing universe. The question is not, how do I avoid detours? The question is, how do I navigate detours with wisdom and grace when they inevitably arise?
Another natural law is interdependence. You're not a separate, isolated individual making your way through a neutral universe. You're intimately connected to everything and everyone. Your well-being and others' well-being are interconnected. Your path and others' paths are woven together. Sometimes your path has to take a detour because someone else's path intersects with yours in an unexpected way. Sometimes a door has to close for you so that a door can open for someone else. This isn't personal, it's the nature of our interdependent existence. When you understand this deep interconnection, you can hold detours more lightly. Maybe this job you didn't get was meant to go to someone who needed it more. Maybe this relationship that ended was freeing both of you to find more aligned partners. Maybe this business that failed taught you lessons that you'll share with others, preventing them from making the same mistakes. You're not the center of the universe, and your path is not separate from the larger pattern of existence. This perspective doesn't make you less important. It makes you part of something vast and meaningful. Your detours are not just about you. They're part of the larger unfolding of collective karma, of the interdependent arising of all things. There's something beautiful and humbling about this realization. The Buddha also taught about the three characteristics of existence: anicca, or impermanence, dukkha, or suffering or unsatisfactoriness, and anatta, or non-self. We've talked about impermanence. Let's look at how the other two relate to trusting the process through detours. Dukkha is often translated as suffering, but it's more subtle than that. It refers to the fundamental unsatisfactoriness of conditioned existence. Even pleasant experiences are dukkha because they don't last. Even when you get what you want, it doesn't fully satisfy because it changes. You get the job you wanted, but then you have new stresses. You find the relationship you sought, but then you fear losing it. You achieve your goal, but then you need a new goal. Understanding dukkha doesn't make you depressed or nihilistic. It makes you realistic. It helps you stop expecting that if you could just get on the right path, if you could just avoid detours, if you could just get what you want, then you'd be permanently happy. That's not how it works. The straight path has its own forms of dukkha. The detour has different forms of dukkha. Both involve challenge and change. When you stop expecting any path to be free from difficulty, you stop being shocked and devastated when detours arise. Of course there are detours. This is the nature of existence. Of course things don't go perfectly according to plan. That was never realistic. This doesn't mean you can't be happy. It means your happiness can't depend on getting a perfect, detour-free path. Your happiness has to come from something deeper, from wisdom, from acceptance, from presence, from how you relate to the path, not from the path being exactly what you wanted.
Anatta, or non-self, is perhaps the deepest teaching and the hardest to understand. It's the realization that what you call I, or self, is not a fixed, permanent, independent entity. It's a process, a flow, a constantly changing pattern of experiences. There's no solid, unchanging you that things are happening to. There's just experience arising, moment by moment, with no separate experiencer behind it. This is relevant to detours because much of your suffering around detours comes from taking them personally. This shouldn't be happening to me. Why is this happening to me? What does this mean about me? But when you see through the illusion of a solid, separate self, you realize that detours aren't happening to anyone. They're just happening. They're part of the flow of experience. They're impersonal movements in the larger dance of existence. This doesn't make you cold or indifferent. It actually makes you more flexible and resilient. When you're not constantly defending and protecting a solid sense of self, when you're not worried about what detours mean about me, you can respond to situations more fluidly. You can adapt. You can change. You can let the detour reshape you without feeling like you're losing yourself, because you understand that self is already fluid, already constantly changing. These teachings about karma, causation, interdependence, the three characteristics, they're not just philosophical ideas. They're meant to be investigated in your direct experience. They're meant to inform how you actually live, how you actually navigate the detours that arise in your real life. When you internalize these teachings, trust becomes natural. You trust because you understand how life actually works. You trust because you see that resistance creates suffering, while acceptance creates peace. You trust because you recognize that you're part of a vast, intelligent, interconnected process that's much larger and wiser than your small planning mind. You trust because you've investigated your direct experience and seen that what the Buddha taught is actually true.
Chapter 6. Stories of Transformation Through Detours. Now let's explore some concrete stories, both traditional teaching stories and modern examples that illustrate how detours lead to unexpected destinations. Stories help us internalize teachings in a way that abstract philosophy cannot. They show us what trust looks like in action. Let's start with a traditional Buddhist story about a poor farmer named Causation. She lived in the time of the Buddha and had one son whom she loved desperately. When her son became ill and died, she was consumed with grief. She refused to believe he was dead. She carried his body from house to house, asking if anyone had medicine that could revive him. Finally, someone directed her to the Buddha, suggesting that if anyone had such medicine, it would be him. She went to the Buddha and begged him to revive her son. The Buddha looked at her with infinite compassion and said, "I can help you, but first you must bring me a mustard seed from a household that has never experienced death." Hope ignited in Kisagutami's heart. She went from house to house asking for a mustard seed. Everyone had mustard seeds and was willing to share, but when she asked if death had visited their household, every single person had a story of loss. This one had lost a parent. That one had lost a spouse. Another had lost a child. Every household had been touched by death. Gradually, Kisagutami's perspective began to shift. She realized that her suffering was not unique. Death was universal. Everyone loses those they love. Her grief was not a personal punishment or a mistake. It was part of the human experience. This realization didn't eliminate her grief, but it transformed it. She stopped feeling isolated in her suffering. She felt connected to all of humanity through the shared experience of loss. She returned to the Buddha without a mustard seed, but with a new understanding. The Buddha taught her about impermanence and the nature of attachment. She became one of his students and eventually an awakened disciple. Now, on the surface, the death of her child was a devastating detour from the life she'd planned. If you'd asked her if she wanted this to happen, she would have said absolutely not. But this terrible detour became the catalyst for her spiritual awakening.
It broke open her heart. It shattered her illusions. It forced her to confront fundamental truths about existence. And through that confrontation, she found liberation. This doesn't mean the death was good or that she should be grateful it happened. It means that she was able to use this devastating detour as a vehicle for transformation. She allowed it to teach her rather than destroying her. The detour led her to a destination, enlightenment, that she never would have reached on her planned path of comfortable domesticity. This story illustrates several key points. First, suffering is universal. Your detours are not evidence that something is wrong with you specifically. They're evidence that you're human, that you're subject to the same laws and conditions as everyone else. Second, detours can crack open your heart and consciousness in ways that comfort and ease never could. Third, how you work with a detour determines whether it destroys you or transforms you. Let's look at another traditional story, this time from the Zen tradition. There was a monk named Bankei who spent years trying to achieve enlightenment through intense practice. He pushed himself to extremes, long meditation sessions, harsh austerities, minimal sleep, minimal food. He was completely committed to the spiritual path, doing everything he thought he should do to reach awakening. But enlightenment eluded him. No matter how hard he tried, no matter how much he practiced, he couldn't grasp it. This was a profound detour from what he'd expected. He thought if he just practiced hard enough, enlightenment would come, but it didn't. Then one day, exhausted and discouraged, he coughed up some blood. In that moment, seeing the blood, something shifted. He suddenly realized that enlightenment was not something to be achieved in the future through effort. It was his natural state right now. He'd been looking for something he already had. All his striving had been taking him away from what was always present. The detour, the failure of his practice attempts, culminating in the moment of illness, was actually what led him to genuine awakening. This doesn't mean the illness was good or that he should be grateful it happened. It means that he was able to use this devastating detour as a vehicle for transformation. She allowed it to teach her rather than destroying her. The detour led her to a destination, enlightenment, that she never would have reached on her planned path of comfortable domesticity. Now, let's look at some modern examples. I want to share a story about a woman named Sarah. Not her real name, but her story is real. Sarah had a clear plan for her life. She would become a lawyer, work at a prestigious firm, make partner by 35, and build a successful career. She'd worked toward this goal since high school, doing everything right: good grades, prestigious university, top law school, clerkship with a respected judge. She got her dream job at a major law firm. For the first 2 years, she worked 80-hour weeks, barely sleeping, completely dedicated to her career path. Then she had what she describes as a breakdown. The stress, the long hours, the work she wasn't passionate about, it all caught up with her. She became severely depressed and anxious. She couldn't work. She had to take a leave of absence. This was a massive detour from her plan. She felt like a failure. All those years of preparation, and she couldn't handle the career she had worked so hard to achieve. She felt ashamed and lost. What was wrong with her that she couldn't do what so many others were doing? During her leave, a friend suggested she try a meditation retreat, more as a way to manage her anxiety than anything else. She went, skeptical and desperate, and something shifted. In the silence and stillness of that week, she began to hear a quieter voice beneath her anxiety, a voice that had been there all along, but that she had been too busy to notice. This voice told her that the prestigious law career was never really what she wanted. It was what she thought she should want. What she actually wanted, what she had always wanted but dismissed as impractical, was to work with children, maybe as a teacher or counselor. The breakdown wasn't a failure. It was her authentic self refusing to continue on a path that wasn't hers. Long story short, Sarah eventually retrained as a school counselor. She now works with adolescents dealing with mental health challenges. She makes a fraction of what she would have made as a lawyer. She has student loans she'll be paying off for years. By conventional measures, the detour cost her a lot.
but she describes herself as genuinely happy for the first time in her adult life. She wakes up feeling aligned with her work. She goes to bed feeling like she made a difference. The detour, the breakdown that seemed so devastating, redirected her from a path that would have brought success but not fulfillment to a path that brings genuine meaning and purpose.
Could she have figured this out without the breakdown? Maybe, but she was so committed to her plan, so invested in the identity of successful lawyer, that she probably would have pushed through for years or even decades before admitting that it wasn't right for her. The detour forced the reckoning earlier. It was painful, but it was also a gift. Here's another modern example. A man named James had built a successful business over 15 years. It was his baby, his identity, his life's work. Then, due to circumstances partly in his control and partly beyond it, some poor decisions, some bad luck, a changing market, the business failed. He lost everything. He had to declare bankruptcy. This was not a minor detour. This was his entire life plan collapsing. He fell into a deep depression. He felt like a fraud, a failure. He'd told everyone he was a successful entrepreneur, and now he'd lost it all. How could he face people? How could he start over at his age? But in the depths of this crisis, something interesting happened. People started reaching out to him. Other entrepreneurs who had experienced failures, friends who shared their own struggles, even strangers who heard his story and offered support. He realized he wasn't alone. He realized that failure is a normal part of the entrepreneurial journey, that many successful people have bankruptcy in their past. He started blogging about his experience, honestly, vulnerably, sharing what he was learning about resilience, about self-worth, about starting over. The blog developed a following. Other people going through business failures found his words helpful. He started speaking at events, coaching other entrepreneurs through difficult transitions. Eventually, he built a new business, not in his original industry, but in coaching and consulting, helping others navigate business challenges and failures. This new business aligned more deeply with his values and his actual strengths. He realized his first business had been built more on ego and external validation than on genuine passion. He says now that losing his first business was the best thing that ever happened to him, though he could never have said that in the moment. The detour forced him to examine what actually mattered to him, to develop genuine compassion for himself and others, to build a business that was about contribution rather than just success. The destination he reached through the detour was more meaningful than anything he had planned. These stories, ancient and modern, show a common pattern. The detour feels terrible in the moment. It involves loss, confusion, pain, uncertainty. It forces you to let go of your plan and your identity. But when you work with it rather than just resisting it, when you remain open to what it's teaching you, it often leads to destinations more aligned with your authentic self than anything you could have planned from your limited perspective. The key is not that every detour automatically leads somewhere better. The key is that detours create openings for growth, redirection, and transformation that aren't available on a straight path. Whether you access those openings depends on how you relate to the detour. Do you see it only as a problem to be fixed as quickly as possible so you can get back on track? Or do you see it as a teacher, as an invitation to examine your path, to discover something new about yourself, to grow in unexpected ways? Another important pattern in these stories, the people who transformed through their detours didn't do it alone. Kisa Gotami had the Buddha's guidance. Bankei had his tradition and teachers. Sarah found support in meditation and community. James found connection through sharing his vulnerability. Community, guidance, teaching, connection, these are essential supports for navigating detours with wisdom. The Buddhist concept of Sangha, or spiritual community, is crucial here. You're not meant to walk the path alone. You're not meant to figure everything out by yourself. When you're in a detour, reaching out, whether to a teacher, a therapist, a support group, friends who have walked similar paths, can make all the difference.
Others can see possibilities you can't see when you're deep in the struggle. They can remind you of truths you've forgotten. They can hold hope for you when you can't hold it for yourself. There's a beautiful teaching that says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Detours are marathon territory. They're not quick sprints. You need traveling companions for the long haul. Pride that prevents you from asking for help can keep you stuck in suffering. Humility that allows you to reach out can open doors you didn't know existed. Let me share one more story, a personal one. Years ago, I experienced a detour that felt absolutely devastating at the time. I'd been working towards a particular goal for years, investing time, energy, money, everything. I was certain this was my path. Then, right when I was on the verge of achieving this goal, circumstances shifted in a way I couldn't control, and the whole thing fell apart. I was angry, I was hurt, I felt betrayed by life. I'd done everything right, and it hadn't worked out. What was the point of effort if you could do everything right and still fail? I seriously questioned whether I could trust anything anymore. But I had a practice, I had meditation, I had teachings I'd studied, and I had a teacher who listened to my pain and then gently asked, what if this isn't a mistake? What if this is exactly what needed to happen? What if your attachment to this particular goal was actually limiting you and life is opening you to something larger? I didn't want to hear that. I wanted to be right about being wronged. But the question lodged in my mind, and slowly, over months, I began to see what my teacher was pointing to. The goal I'd been pursuing was based on who I thought I should be, not who I actually was. Achieving it would have taken me further from my authentic path, not closer to it. The detour was protecting me from a destination that would have looked good externally, but felt hollow internally. The space created by that closed door allowed me to discover what I was actually called to do. It led me to teaching, to sharing these Buddhist principles with others, to this work I'm doing right now. I would never have found this path if my original plan had succeeded. The detour was the best thing that could have happened to me, though I could never have said it in the moment. I share this because I want you to know I'm not teaching about trusting detours from a place of never having experienced devastating ones. I'm teaching from a place of having walked through them, of having resisted and suffered and eventually surrendered and trusted. I know how hard it is. I also know how transformative it can be when you work with detours as teachers rather than fighting them as enemies.
Chapter 7. Practical Guidance for Navigating Your Detours. Now let's get very practical. When you're actually in a detour, when you're feeling lost and discouraged and uncertain, what do you actually do? How do you apply these teachings in real time? Let me offer some concrete guidance, step by step. Step 1. Acknowledge the reality of the detour without catastrophizing. The first step is simply to see and name what's happening without making it worse with your story about it. I lost my job is reality. I lost my job and my life is over and I'll never recover and I'm a complete failure is catastrophizing. Can you feel the difference? Practice stating the facts of your situation without adding interpretation. This relationship ended. I didn't get accepted to that program. I got sick. This plan didn't work out. Just the facts. Then notice when your mind wants to add story and interpretation. You don't have to believe those stories. You can acknowledge them as thoughts without treating them as truth. This requires mindfulness, the ability to observe your thoughts without being completely swept away by them. If you don't have a regular meditation practice, this is a perfect time to start one. Even 5 to 10 minutes a day of sitting quietly, following your breath, and practicing noticing thoughts without engaging with them will help enormously. Step 2. Feel your feelings without judgment. Detours bring up difficult emotions. Disappointment, fear, anger, grief, shame, confusion, these are natural human responses to loss and uncertainty. The Buddha didn't teach that you should eliminate emotions or pretend you don't feel them. He taught that you should be present with them, feel them fully, and let them move through you rather than suppressing them or acting them out destructively. Give yourself permission to feel what you're feeling. If you're sad, be sad. If you're angry, be angry. If you're scared, be scared. These emotions are not weaknesses. They're honest responses to challenging situations. Create space for them. You might journal about them, talk to a trusted friend, move your body to release the emotional energy, or simply sit in meditation and feel the physical sensations that accompany the emotions. What you're avoiding is two extremes: suppressing the emotions, I shouldn't feel this way, I should be more positive, or being completely consumed by them. I am this anger, this fear defines me. The middle way is to acknowledge the emotions, feel them, but not identify with them. There is sadness present rather than I am sad. This creates space for the emotion to be there without overwhelming you. The Buddha taught about the importance of self-compassion. Treat yourself the way you'd treat a dear friend who was going through this same detour. You wouldn't tell your friend to just get over it or that they should already be past this. You'd offer kindness, patience, understanding. Offer that to yourself. Step 3, examine your attachments and expectations. Once you've acknowledged reality and made space for your emotions, you can begin to investigate more deeply. What were you attached to that the detour has disturbed? What expectations did you have that haven't been met? What did you believe about how things should go? The Buddha taught that attachment is a primary cause of suffering. Not attachment in the sense of loving people or caring about outcomes, but attachment in the sense of clinging, of demanding that things be a certain way, of making your peace dependent on getting what you want. When you examine your attachments around a detour, you might discover beliefs you didn't know you had. I believed that if I worked hard enough, I'd be guaranteed success. I believed that good people don't experience these kinds of losses. I believed I could control outcomes if I planned carefully enough. I believed my worth depended on achieving this goal. These beliefs, when brought into the light of awareness, often reveal themselves as unrealistic or based on false premises. The detour isn't proving that you're a failure. It's revealing that your belief system needs updating. This is valuable information. It's painful, yes, but it's also an opportunity for growth and wisdom. Ask yourself, what am I making this detour mean about me, about life, about my future? Are these meanings true, or are they stories I'm telling myself? What would happen if I questioned these stories? Step 4, look for what's being offered, not just what's being taken away. This is where reframing comes in. Yes, the detour involves loss. A door has closed. A plan has been disrupted. Something you wanted didn't happen. Can you also look at what's being offered? What new space is being created? What new options are emerging? What are you free from now? What have you learned? What strengths are you discovering? This isn't about forced positivity or denying the difficulty. It's about maintaining a balanced perspective. Both things can be true. This is hard, and there are opportunities here. I didn't want this to happen, and I can work with what's actually happening. The Buddha taught about the importance of wise reflection. Take time to contemplate your situation from multiple angles. Journal about it. Talk it through with someone wise. Sit with it in meditation. Ask yourself, how might this detour be serving me? What might it be protecting me from? What might it be preparing me for? What is it teaching me? You might not have clear answers to these questions immediately. That's okay. The questions themselves shift your perspective from pure victimhood to curious investigation. They open your mind to possibilities you couldn't see when you were only focused on the loss. Step 5.
Take the next right action without needing to see the whole path. One of the biggest challenges with detours is that you can't see where they're leading. You don't have a new plan yet. You don't know what comes next. This uncertainty can be paralyzing. You might freeze, unable to act because you can't see the whole path forward. But here's what the Buddha taught about this. You don't need to see the whole path. You only need to see the next step. The Dhammapada says, do not dwell in the past, do not dream of the future, concentrate the mind on the present moment. In the present moment, there's always something you can do, some next right action you can take. Maybe you can't see how you'll rebuild your entire career, but you can update your resume today. Maybe you can't see how you'll heal from this heartbreak, but you can take a walk in nature today. Maybe you can't see how you'll recover financially, but you can make a phone call to get information today. Small, concrete actions in the present moment create momentum and clarity. Trust that if you take the next right action and then the next one after that, a path will emerge. You're not building the whole bridge before you cross it. You're laying one plank at a time, and each plank you lay reveals where the next one needs to go. The Buddha's teaching on right effort is relevant here. Make effort, but don't strain. Try, but don't force. Act, but don't attach to outcomes. Do what you can do, then release it. This prevents both the paralysis of inaction and the exhaustion of desperate striving. Step 6. Seek support and wisdom from others. As I mentioned earlier, you're not meant to navigate detours alone. This is where Sangha, spiritual community, becomes essential. Reach out to people who can support you. This might include a therapist or counselor who can help you process emotions and develop coping strategies, a meditation teacher or spiritual guide who can offer perspective rooted in wisdom tradition, friends who have been through similar detours and can share their experience, a support group of people dealing with similar challenges, mentors who can offer practical guidance for your specific situation, family members who can provide emotional support if they're capable of doing so skillfully. Be discerning about who you reach out to. Some people will feed your victim story and keep you stuck in resentment. Others will offer toxic positivity that denies the reality of your pain. Look for people who can hold both truths. This is genuinely difficult, and you're capable of working with it. This is painful, and you're not broken. This wasn't what you wanted, and you can move forward. The Buddha emphasized the importance of admirable friendship, kalyana mittata. Spend time with people who inspire you to be wiser, more compassionate, more honest with yourself. Avoid people who reinforce your worst tendencies, your victimhood, your bitterness, your self-pity, your avoidance. Also, this is a perfect time to deepen your engagement with teachings. Read books by wise teachers, listen to Dharma talks, study the experiences of others who have navigated similar detours. You're not the first person to lose a job, end a relationship, face illness, or experience failure. Learn from those who have walked before you. Step 7. Cultivate patience with the process. Detours don't resolve on your timeline. You don't get to decide how long it takes for clarity to emerge, for new opportunities to appear, for healing to happen. This requires patience, khanti in Pali, which the Buddha taught is one of the most important qualities to develop.
Patience doesn't mean passive waiting. It means active engagement without demanding immediate results. It means trusting that if you keep showing up, keep practicing, keep taking the next right action, the path will reveal itself in its own time. Western culture is very oriented toward quick fixes and immediate results. We want to know the outcome now. We want the pain to end now. We want the new plan to be clear now. But transformation doesn't work on our preferred timeline. Seeds planted don't become trees overnight. Healing happens in its own rhythm. Clarity emerges when the time is right. Practice saying to yourself, I don't need to know how this will turn out. I don't need to have it all figured out right now. I can trust that each day I'm exactly where I need to be in this process. I can be patient with my own unfolding. This patience is supported by the practices we've discussed: meditation, mindfulness, connecting with impermanence, remembering that everything changes. When you're deeply rooted in these practices, patience becomes easier because you're not fighting against the nature of reality. You're flowing with it. Step 8. Practice gratitude even in the midst of difficulty. This might seem counterintuitive. How can you practice gratitude when you're going through a painful detour? But this is exactly when gratitude practice is most powerful and most transformative. You're not practicing gratitude for the detour itself, though you might eventually feel gratitude for what it taught you. You're practicing gratitude for everything else that's still present in your life: your health, if you have it, your relationships, your skills, your past experiences, the fact that you're still breathing, still here, still capable of taking another step. The Buddha taught that where you place your attention shapes your experience. If you only focus on what's wrong, you'll feel hopeless and stuck. If you can also notice what's right, what's still working, what you still have, you create a more balanced and sustainable perspective. Every day, even on the hardest days, practice finding 3 things you're grateful for. They can be small: a good cup of coffee, sunshine, a kind word from a stranger, a moment of peace. This practice doesn't deny the difficulty. It prevents the difficulty from becoming your entire reality. Gratitude also has a physiological effect. Research shows it literally changes your brain chemistry, reducing stress hormones and increasing feel-good neurotransmitters. It's not just spiritual bypassing, it's a practical tool for maintaining well-being during challenging times. Step 9. Create meaning from the experience. Viktor Frankl, who survived Nazi concentration camps and later developed logotherapy, wrote that humans can endure almost anything if they can find meaning in it. The Buddha taught something similar. Suffering without meaning is simply suffering. Suffering that you work with skillfully becomes the path to wisdom and compassion. As you move through your detour, begin to ask yourself, what meaning can I make from this experience? What am I learning? How am I growing? How might this experience serve not just me, but others? How am I becoming more compassionate, more resilient, more wise, more humble? You might not be able to answer these questions immediately. Meaning often emerges in retrospect. But holding these questions keeps you oriented toward growth rather than just survival. It helps you see the detour as a chapter in your larger story, not as the end of your story. Some people find meaning by using their difficult experience to help others going through similar challenges. Some find meaning by developing qualities they couldn't have developed otherwise. Some find meaning by discovering what truly matters to them. Some find meaning simply by enduring and proving to themselves that they're stronger than they thought. The meaning you make doesn't have to be grand or dramatic. It just has to be real for you. It has to help you move from "why is this happening to me?" to "what is this here to teach me?" That shift transforms you from victim to student, from passive sufferer to active learner. Step 10. Periodically release and surrender what you cannot control. Even as you're taking action, seeking support, and working with your detour skillfully, you need regular practices of release and surrender, because no matter how skillful you are, there are aspects of the situation you simply cannot control. Fighting with that reality creates exhausting, pointless suffering. Create a regular practice, maybe daily, maybe weekly, where you consciously release what you cannot control. You might do this through meditation, through writing, through ritual, or through prayer if that's part of your practice. You might say something like, I release my attachment to knowing how this will turn out. I release my need to control the timeline. I release my demand that this situation be different than it is. I release my grip on my old plan. I surrender to what is actually happening. I trust that I'm being guided even when I can't see where this is leading. This isn't giving up. This is giving over. Giving over to life, to the Dharma, to the wisdom that's larger than your planning mind. It's acknowledging that your job is to do your best and release the rest, to plant good seeds and trust the conditions for growth, to show up fully while holding outcomes lightly. The Buddha taught about the importance of letting go. One of his core teachings was about relinquishment. He said that clinging is suffering and release is peace. Every time you practice letting go of what you cannot control, you're training yourself in the art of peace, the art of trust, the art of flowing with life rather than fighting against it. These 10 steps are not meant to be followed rigidly or in exact order. They're guidelines, tools you can return to again and again as you navigate your detour. Some days you might need step 2, just feeling your feelings. Other days you might need step 8, gratitude practice. Still other days you might need step 10, surrender and release. The key is to work with your detour consciously and skillfully rather than just reacting to it, to use it as an opportunity for growth rather than seeing it only as an obstacle, to trust that even though you can't see where this path is leading, it is leading somewhere, and that somewhere might be better than anywhere you could have planned from your current level of understanding.
Chapter 8. The Deeper Wisdom. Why Detours Are Necessary. Now let's go even deeper into why detours aren't just inevitable, but actually necessary for your evolution and awakening. This might be the most challenging teaching to accept, but it's also the most liberating when you truly understand it. The Buddha taught that we live in samsara, the cycle of existence characterized by suffering and dissatisfaction until we awaken. Awakening doesn't mean achieving some perfect state where nothing ever goes wrong. It means seeing through the illusions that create suffering and relating to experience with wisdom rather than with ignorance. One of the primary illusions is that there's a perfect path you could take through life where you'd avoid all pain, all loss, all difficulty. If you could just find that path, if you could just make all the right choices, if you could just be smart enough or good enough or lucky enough, you could have a smooth, straight journey to happiness. This is fantasy. This is not how life works. And your attachment to this fantasy is actually what creates much of your suffering. You keep expecting the path to be straight, and then you keep being devastated when it's not. The detours aren't the problem. Your expectation that there shouldn't be detours is the problem. The Buddha taught about the first noble truth. Life involves suffering, dukkha. Birth is suffering. Aging is suffering. Illness is suffering. Death is suffering. Not getting what you want is suffering. Getting what you don't want is suffering. Being separated from what you love is suffering. This isn't pessimism. This is realism. When you truly accept this, not just intellectually, but in your bones, you stop being shocked by detours. Of course life involves unexpected difficulties. Of course plans fall apart. Of course you'll experience loss and disappointment and things not going the way you hoped. This is the nature of conditioned existence. This is what it means to be human in a changing, uncertain, interdependent universe. But here's what's beautiful. When you stop resisting this reality, when you stop fighting against the fundamental nature of existence, you become free. You're no longer wasting enormous energy demanding that life be different than it is. You're no longer collapsing every time something goes wrong because you thought it shouldn't go wrong. You develop equanimity, the ability to remain steady and balanced regardless of changing circumstances. And this equanimity isn't cold or indifferent. It's warm, wise, and compassionate. It's the recognition that life includes both pleasure and pain, both gain and loss, both success and failure, and that you can be okay regardless of which one you're experiencing in this moment. Your well-being doesn't depend on getting the pleasant experiences and avoiding the unpleasant ones. Your well-being comes from wisdom, from acceptance, from presence, from compassion, qualities that can be developed precisely through working with difficulties. This is why detours are necessary. They're necessary because they force you to develop these qualities. A perfectly smooth path would never require you to develop resilience, patience, adaptability, compassion, humility, surrender, trust, or wisdom. You'd just be comfortable and perhaps complacent. You'd have no reason to question your assumptions, examine your attachments, or grow beyond your current limitations. Think about physical exercise again. If you only ever lifted weights that were comfortable and easy, you'd never build any strength. The resistance, the difficulty, the strain, that's what builds muscle. Your muscles actually grow during the recovery period after you've broken them down through exercise. The breakdown is necessary for the building up. Life works the same way. The detours break down your limited sense of self, your rigid plans, your false certainties. And in the recovery from that breaking down, in the process of adapting, growing, learning, you become stronger, wiser, more capable, more compassionate. The breakdown is necessary for the breakthrough. The Buddha himself only awakened because his comfortable life as a prince broke down. The detour of seeing the four sights, old age, illness, death, and a wandering ascetic, shattered his protected, comfortable existence and sent him on a spiritual quest. His years of ascetic practice that failed broke down his attachment to extreme methods. His night under the Bodhi tree, confronting his doubts and fears, broke down his final illusions. If Siddhartha's life had gone smoothly according to plan, we wouldn't have the Buddha. We wouldn't have these teachings. Millions of people across thousands of years wouldn't have found liberation through his wisdom. His detours weren't mistakes. They were absolutely necessary for his awakening and for his ability to guide others toward awakening. Your detours work the same way. They're breaking down what needs to be broken down so that something truer, wiser, and more authentic can emerge. This doesn't mean you should seek out suffering or that you should be grateful for every painful thing that happens. It means you can trust that when difficulties arise, as they inevitably will, they're not meaningless obstacles. They're part of the process of your becoming. There's a concept in Buddhism called the far enemy and the near enemy of various qualities. The far enemy of compassion is cruelty, obviously the opposite. But the near enemy of compassion is pity. Pity looks similar to compassion, but is actually based on seeing yourself as superior to the one who's suffering. I'm okay, you're not, poor you. The far enemy of trust is paranoid suspicion, but the near enemy of trust is naive optimism, the belief that everything will always work out perfectly, that there's no real danger, that you don't need to be skillful or wise because the universe will magically take care of everything. True trust, the kind of trust the Buddha taught, is not naive. It's not pretending that detours don't hurt or don't matter. It's not spiritual bypassing that denies real pain. True trust acknowledges the full reality of suffering while also recognizing the larger pattern of awakening that's always available.
This trust says, yes, this is hard. Yes, I'm struggling. Yes, I didn't want this to happen. And I trust that I'm exactly where I need to be for my growth right now. And I trust that something is working itself out through this difficulty, even though I can't see what it is. And I trust that I'm capable of working with this, of learning from it, of allowing it to break me open rather than break me down. This kind of trust has to be earned through direct experience. You can't just decide to trust based on some teaching you heard. You have to walk through detours, work them skillfully, and then look back and see, oh, I did make it through. I did grow from that. It was hard, but it did serve me in ways I couldn't see at the time. Each time you have this experience, your trust deepens. You build up evidence that the teachings are true, that working with reality is wiser than fighting against it, that detours do lead to unexpected destinations. The Buddha taught about the importance of direct seeing, not believing things on faith, but investigating them in your own experience. This is exactly what you're doing when you work with detours. You're investigating. Is it true that resistance creates suffering? Is it true that acceptance creates peace? Is it true that difficulties can be teachers? Is it true that I'm more resilient than I thought? Is it true that something good can come from something painful? Your detours are laboratories for testing these teachings, and every time you test them and find them true, your confidence in the Dharma deepens. You're not blindly trusting, you're wisely trusting based on direct experience. There's also something important to understand about timing. The Buddha taught about kairos, the right time. Sometimes things don't happen when you want them to because it's not the right time. You're not ready. The conditions aren't ripe. Something else needs to happen first. From your limited perspective, the delay seems like a problem, a detour, a frustration. But from a larger perspective, the timing is perfect. You needed this time to develop certain qualities, to learn certain lessons, to meet certain people, to heal certain wounds. The destination you're trying to reach isn't going anywhere. It will still be there when you're actually ready for it. I once heard a teacher say, "Your timing is perfect even when it's not your preferred timing." This is a challenging teaching to accept, especially when you're impatiently waiting for something to happen or desperately trying to make something happen that isn't happening. But when you look back at your life, can you see examples of this? Times when a delay turned out to be beneficial? Times when getting what you wanted when you first wanted it would have been premature? The detours are often what make you ready for the destination. They're preparing you, maturing you, developing you into someone who can actually handle and appreciate what you're seeking. If you got it too soon, you might squander it, take it for granted, or be overwhelmed by it. The detour is giving you time to become who you need to be. This is particularly true with spiritual development. The Buddha taught about gradual training, that awakening happens in stages, that you can't skip steps, that each stage of practice prepares you for the next one. If someone who had just begun practicing tried to jump straight to advanced meditation techniques, they'd likely just create more confusion for themselves. They need to develop concentration first, then mindfulness, then insight in a natural progression. Your life works the same way. You're being trained gradually. Each experience is preparing you for the next one. The detours are part of the curriculum. They're teaching you lessons you need to learn before you can move forward. Trying to skip them, trying to force your way past them, just means you'll have to learn the lessons later, possibly in more difficult ways. So the deepest wisdom about detours is this: they're not interrupting your path, they are your path. The destination you're seeking isn't separate from the journey you're on. The person you need to become to truly arrive at your destination is being formed by how you walk the path, including how you navigate the detours. If you could take a helicopter straight to the mountain peak, you'd miss the whole point. The climb itself, the effort, the challenges, the views along the way, the strength you build, the companions you meet, that's where the real value is. The peak is just a peak. The journey is where the transformation happens. Your life is not about getting to some final destination where you'll finally be happy and everything will be perfect. That destination doesn't exist. Your life is about the journey itself, about who you're becoming as you walk it, about the consciousness you're bringing to each step, about the love and wisdom you're cultivating along the way. The detours are not taking you away from this. They're deepening it, enriching it, making it more real and more meaningful. They're stripping away what's false and revealing what's true. They're burning through your illusions and your pretenses and your ego's plans, leaving you more authentic, more humble, more compassionate, more wise. This is why the Buddha could say with complete sincerity that difficulties are not obstacles to the path, they are the path. And advanced practitioners actually develop gratitude for challenges, seeing them as opportunities for practice, for growth, for awakening. You don't have to force yourself to be grateful for your detours, but you can begin to see them differently, not as punishments or mistakes or evidence that something is wrong with you or your life, but as essential chapters in your story, as necessary teachers, as the very curriculum life is offering you for your evolution. When you see them this way, you can stop fighting them quite so hard. You can start working with them more skillfully. You can begin to trust, not that everything will be easy or exactly what you want, but that everything that arises can be worked with, can teach you something, can serve your highest development if you allow it to.
Chapter 9. Signs you're on the right path, even when it doesn't feel like it. One of the most confusing aspects of navigating detours is that you often can't tell whether you're on the right path or completely lost. How do you know if you should keep going or change direction? How do you distinguish between wise patience and foolish stubbornness? How do you know if you're trusting the process or just avoiding taking responsibility? These are important questions, and the Buddha offered guidance on them. Let's explore the signs that indicate you're working with your detour skillfully, even when it doesn't feel good. Sign 1. You're growing in self-awareness. If the detour is leading you to understand yourself more deeply, to see your patterns, your triggers, your shadows, your strengths, your values, then it's serving you. Growth in self-awareness is always a sign you're on a valuable path, even if it's uncomfortable. Ask yourself, am I learning things about myself through this experience? Am I seeing patterns I was blind to before? Am I becoming more honest with myself about my motivations, my fears, my desires? If yes, then the detour is working, even if it's painful. The Buddha emphasized self-knowledge as essential to awakening. He taught that you can't transform what you don't see clearly. The detour that forces you to see yourself more clearly is a gift, even when it's wrapped in difficulty. Sign 2. You're developing compassion for yourself and others. If the detour is softening your heart rather than hardening it, you're working with it skillfully. If you're becoming more understanding of human struggle, more gentle with your own imperfections, more connected to others who suffer, these are all signs of positive growth. Ask yourself, is this experience making me more judgmental and bitter, or more compassionate and understanding? Am I becoming more isolated and defended, or more open and connected? Your answer will tell you whether you're on the right track. The Buddha taught that compassion is a natural result of wisdom. When you truly understand the nature of suffering, that it's universal, that it arises from ignorance and clinging, that everyone is doing the best they can from their current level of consciousness, you naturally feel more compassionate. If your detour is leading you toward this understanding, it's serving you well. Sign 3. You're releasing what no longer serves you. Detours often force us to let go of things we were clinging to, identities, relationships, plans, beliefs, material things. If you notice yourself gradually releasing your grip on what no longer serves you, even though it's scary, you're moving in the right direction. Ask yourself, what am I being asked to release? My need for control? My attachment to a particular outcome? My identification with a certain role or status? My belief that I have to have everything figured out? The ability to release what needs to be released is a sign of spiritual maturity. The Buddha taught that clinging is the root of suffering. Any experience that helps you loosen your grip, that teaches you to hold things lightly, that shows you that you can survive letting go, that's valuable progress even when it doesn't feel like it in the moment. Sign 4. You're taking responsibility without blaming yourself. This is a delicate balance. On one hand, you're taking responsibility for your part in the situation and for how you respond to it. On the other hand, you're not drowning in shame or self-blame.
You're holding yourself accountable while also being kind to yourself. Ask yourself, am I able to look honestly at my choices and their consequences without collapsing into I'm a terrible person? Can I acknowledge my mistakes while also recognizing that I was doing the best I could at the time? Can I commit to doing better while also forgiving myself for being human and imperfect? If you can hold this balance, you're working with your detour wisely. The Buddha taught about right view, seeing things as they actually are, without the distortions of excessive self-criticism or defensive self-justification. Cultivating right view around your detour is a sign of progress. Sign 5. You're staying present rather than constantly escaping. This is crucial. When you're in a difficult detour, the temptation to escape is strong. You might escape through substances, through distractions, through staying frantically busy, through fantasy and daydreaming, through compulsive behaviors. Some of these escapes are understandable and even necessary in moderation, but if you're using them to completely avoid feeling and processing your experience, you're not working with the detour, you're just postponing the inevitable. Ask yourself, am I able to be present with my discomfort at least some of the time? Am I allowing myself to feel what I'm feeling, to sit with the uncertainty, to face the difficulty? Or am I constantly running away into distractions? The Buddha taught that presence, mindfulness, is the path to liberation. If your detour is teaching you to be more present even with discomfort, you're developing one of the most valuable skills available to human beings. Sign 6. You're finding moments of peace even in the midst of difficulty. This doesn't mean you're happy all the time or that everything feels fine. It means that even in the midst of challenge, you're discovering that peace is possible. You're finding it in your meditation practice, in moments of stillness, in connection with others, in nature, in simple pleasures. You're learning that peace doesn't depend on circumstances being perfect. Ask yourself, can I access peace even if just for moments? Can I still find beauty, still feel gratitude, still feel connection? If yes, you're developing the equanimity the Buddha taught, the ability to touch peace regardless of external conditions. This is one of the most important signs that you're on the right path, because if you can find peace in the midst of your detour, you're proving to yourself that peace is an inside job. You're not dependent on life going your way to be okay. This is profound freedom.
Sign 7. You're taking wise action rather than reactive action. There's a difference between panicked scrambling and wise response. When you're in a detour, you might feel pressure to do something, anything, to fix the situation immediately, but wise action comes from a place of clarity and groundedness, not from panic. Ask yourself, are my actions coming from fear and desperation or from clarity and wisdom? Am I making choices that align with my values, or am I just trying to make the discomfort stop as quickly as possible? Am I responding to what's actually happening, or am I reacting to my fearful thoughts about what might happen? The Buddha taught about right action, action that's skillful, that considers consequences, that comes from wisdom rather than from greed, hatred, or delusion. If you're taking time to get grounded before acting, if you're consulting wise counsel, if you're considering the longer-term implications of your choices rather than just seeking immediate relief, these are all signs of right action. Sign 8. You're staying open to unexpected possibilities. When you're rigidly focused on getting back to your original plan, you might miss opportunities that the detour is revealing. But if you're staying curious and open, if you're willing to consider paths you hadn't thought of before, if you're letting go of your attachment to one specific outcome, these are signs of wise flexibility. Ask yourself, am I staying curious about where this might lead? Am I open to possibilities I hadn't considered before? Or am I so fixated on my original plan that I can't see anything else? The Buddha taught about beginner's mind,
approaching experience with freshness and openness rather than with fixed ideas about how things should be. If your detour is cultivating beginner's mind in you, it's serving you well. Sign 9. You're building genuine confidence based on direct experience. As you navigate your detour, as you face difficulty and discover you can handle it, as you feel your feelings without falling apart, as you take steps forward even when you're scared, you're building real confidence. This isn't the false confidence of pretending everything is fine. It's the genuine confidence that comes from direct experience of your own resilience and capability. Ask yourself, am I discovering that I'm stronger than I thought? Am I proving to myself that I can handle difficulty? Am I building trust in my own capacity to navigate uncertainty? If yes, then your detour is developing one of the most valuable qualities you can possess, self-trust based on evidence, not on wishful thinking. The Buddha taught that confidence, saddha, based on direct experience is essential to the path. You're developing exactly that. Sign 10. You're finding meaning and purpose, even in difficulty. We talked earlier about Viktor Frankl's teaching that humans can endure almost anything if they can find meaning in it. If you're discovering meaning in your detour, if you're seeing how it's teaching you, shaping you, connecting you to others, revealing what matters most, then you're working with it powerfully. Ask yourself, what meaning am I making from this experience? How is it contributing to my growth? How might it serve not just me, but others? What purpose is it revealing? When you can find purpose in your pain, when you can see your detour as meaningful rather than just meaningless suffering, you transform it into a vehicle for awakening. This is what the Buddha meant by right view, seeing the potential for liberation in every experience. These 10 signs are not about feeling good all the time or pretending difficulty doesn't hurt. They're about recognizing authentic progress even when you're still struggling. If you can identify even a few of these signs in your current experience, you can trust that you're working with your detour skillfully. You're on a path of growth, even if it's not the path you planned. And remember, you don't have to exhibit all these signs perfectly all the time. Some days you'll be present and compassionate and wise. Other days you'll be reactive and defensive and lost. That's normal. That's human. What matters is the overall trajectory. Are you gradually moving toward more awareness, more compassion, more wisdom, more peace? If yes, trust.
And remember, you don't have to exhibit all these signs perfectly all the time. Some days you'll be present and compassionate and wise. Other days you'll be reactive and defensive and lost. That's normal. That's human. What matters is the overall trajectory. Are you gradually moving toward more awareness, more compassion, more wisdom, more peace? If yes, trust the process. You're on the right path. Chapter 10. Working with specific types of detours. Different types of detours present different challenges and opportunities. Let's explore how to apply Buddhist wisdom to some of the most common detours people face, offering specific guidance for each. Career and financial detours. Losing a job, business failure, financial setbacks, these detours shake our sense of security and often our sense of identity. In a culture that closely ties worth to productivity and earning power, career detours can feel like personal failures. The Buddha taught about right livelihood as part of the Eightfold Path. Right livelihood doesn't just mean earning money ethically. It means work that aligns with your values and contributes to reducing suffering rather than increasing it. Career detours often force you to examine whether your work truly aligns with right livelihood. When facing a career detour, ask yourself, was I working primarily for external validation, status, or money? Or was I genuinely aligned with the work itself? What would right livelihood look like for me? What would it mean to do work that feels meaningful, not just profitable? These detours also teach about non-attachment to identity. If you've been identifying yourself primarily through your career, I am a lawyer, I am an entrepreneur, I am a teacher, losing that career can feel like losing yourself. But the Buddha taught about anatta, non-self. You are not your job, you are not your career, you are awareness itself, temporarily playing various roles. Practice. When you introduce yourself, try doing so without mentioning your job. Notice how that feels. Who are you beyond your professional identity? This detour is inviting you to discover a deeper sense of self, not dependent on external roles. Financial detours specifically teach about impermanence and the nature of security. We tell ourselves that if we just have enough money saved, enough assets, enough financial security, we'll finally feel safe. But the Buddha taught that true security cannot come from external conditions, which are always changing and ultimately unreliable. True security comes from inner development, from wisdom, from equanimity, from self-trust, from community. This doesn't mean you shouldn't be financially responsible or that money doesn't matter. It means you're learning to hold financial security appropriately, as useful but not as the ultimate source of safety. The detour that disrupts your financial security is teaching you where real security lives, in your capacity to adapt, in your creativity, in your connections with others, in your own resilience. Relationship detours. Breakups, divorce, rejection, betrayal, the death of loved ones. Relationship detours cut deep because we are fundamentally relational beings. The Buddha acknowledged this in his teaching about the 8 worldly winds. Union and separation are among the pairs of opposites we all experience. Relationship detours teach about attachment versus love. The Buddha didn't teach that you shouldn't love people or form close bonds. He taught that you should love without clinging, without demanding that the relationship be permanent or that it unfold according to your preferences. When a relationship ends or changes significantly, notice the difference between your genuine love and grief, which are natural and healthy, and your clinging and resistance, which create additional suffering. You can love someone deeply and also accept that the relationship has changed or ended. You can grieve what's lost while also releasing your grip on how things should have been. Practice. Instead of "I need this person" or "I can't live without this relationship," try "I loved this person deeply and I'm sad it ended," or "This relationship was important to me and now it's changing." Notice how this shift from need to appreciation changes your experience. Relationship detours also teach about the difference between loneliness and aloneness. Loneliness is suffering. It's the feeling of being disconnected, abandoned, not enough. Aloneness is simply being with yourself. It's neutral, and it can even be peaceful. The detour of losing a relationship invites you to befriend yourself, to develop a relationship with your own company, to discover that you're actually okay even when you're alone. The Buddha spent years in solitude during his spiritual quest. He discovered that true peace doesn't depend on having the right person with you. It comes from being at peace with yourself. Relationship detours, painful as they are, offer you the same opportunity for discovery. Additionally, relationship detours often reveal patterns you need to see. Why do you keep attracting similar partners? Why do your relationships end in similar ways? What are you not seeing about yourself? The detour is showing you something important. Instead of just moving quickly to the next relationship, can you take time to learn the lesson being offered?
Health detours. Illness, injury, chronic pain, disability. Health detours are among the most challenging because they directly impact your ability to function and often involve significant suffering. The Buddha himself faced illness. The texts record several instances, and he offered profound teachings about working with physical suffering. First, health detours teach the distinction between pain and suffering. Pain is the physical sensation, the ache, the discomfort, the limitation. Suffering is the mental, emotional resistance to the pain, the "this shouldn't be happening," the catastrophizing, the fear about what it means.
You may not be able to eliminate the pain, though of course you should seek appropriate medical treatment, but you can work with the suffering you're adding to the pain through your thoughts and resistance. This is what the Buddha meant by the second arrow: don't add mental suffering to physical pain. Practice. When experiencing physical discomfort, try investigating it with curiosity rather than resistance. Where exactly is it? What's the precise quality of the sensation? Does it stay the same or does it change? What happens when you breathe into it rather than bracing against it? This practice doesn't eliminate pain, but it often reduces the suffering around the pain significantly. Health detours also teach about impermanence in the most direct way, through your own body. The body you have today is not the same body you had 10 years ago. It's constantly changing, aging, responding to conditions. Illness and injury make this impermanence undeniable. You're being taught what the Buddha taught. This body is not permanent. It's not truly yours to control. It's subject to natural laws of change. This teaching might sound depressing, but it's actually liberating when truly understood. If you stop expecting your body to remain forever young and healthy, if you accept that it will change and eventually fail, you can appreciate it more fully while you have it. You can stop taking it for granted. You can be present with your body as it is right now, rather than always wishing it were different. Health detours also often force a radical reordering of priorities. What seemed important when you were healthy, career advancement, material acquisition, keeping up with others, suddenly seems less significant. What you might have been taking for granted, the ability to walk, to breathe easily, to be free from pain, suddenly seems precious. The Buddha taught that wise reflection on death and impermanence, far from being morbid, actually helps you live more fully. Health detours provide this reflection directly. They remind you that your time is limited, that your body will not last forever, that now is the time to live according to your deepest values. Many people report that illness or injury became a turning point in their lives, the moment they finally made changes they'd been avoiding, the catalyst for deeper spiritual practice, the invitation to slow down and reevaluate everything. The health detour, unwanted as it is, becomes a powerful teacher. Creative and professional setbacks. Rejection, failure, creative blocks, projects that don't succeed, these detours challenge our sense of competence and our relationship with success and failure. The Buddha taught that attachment to praise and aversion to blame are two of the 8 worldly winds that toss us around. When your creative work is rejected or your project fails, notice how much of your suffering comes from taking it personally, from making it mean something about your worth. Your worth is not determined by whether your work succeeds in the marketplace or receives recognition. Your worth is inherent. This detour is teaching you to separate your sense of self from external validation. Can you create because you love creating, not because you need the world to validate you? Can you put work into the world and then release attachment to how it's received? Creative and professional setbacks also teach about the process versus outcome orientation. Western culture is very focused on outcomes. Did it succeed? Did it make money? Did it win recognition? But the Buddha taught about focusing on right effort, right intention, right action, the process itself, not just the results. When a project fails or work is rejected, ask yourself, did I do my best with the knowledge and skills I had at the time? Did I learn something? Did I grow in some way? If yes, then it wasn't a failure. It was practice. It was development. The outcome is just the outcome. Your growth through the process is what actually matters. Many successful creators talk about how their biggest failures taught them the most, how rejection forced them to improve, how setbacks redirected them towards better projects. The detour of failure is often the necessary education for eventual success. Practice. Keep a failure resume alongside your regular resume. Document your failures, what you learned from each one, and how they contributed to your growth. This reframes failure from something shameful to be hidden into something valuable to be learned from. Life transition detours. Sometimes the detour isn't a specific loss or setback, but a major life transition that throws you off balance. Moving to a new place, children leaving home, retirement, aging into a new life stage. These transitions involve the loss of familiar identity and structure, even when they're positive changes. The Buddha taught extensively about transitions, particularly through the bardos, the in-between states where one reality has ended, but the next one hasn't fully formed. The word bardo literally means in-between state, and while it's often discussed in relation to death and rebirth, it applies to any major transition. Life transition detours teach you to be comfortable with the not knowing, with the gap between who you were and who you're becoming. This is incredibly uncomfortable for most people. We want to rush through the transition to get to the new stability on the other side. But the Buddha taught that the in-between is where the transformation actually happens. Think of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. Inside the chrysalis, the caterpillar doesn't just grow wings and emerge. It completely dissolves into liquid. Its old form must completely break down before the new form can emerge. The in-between is not just an inconvenience to get through, it's where the metamorphosis occurs. When you're in a life transition detour, practice being with the not knowing. Practice tolerating the discomfort of being between identities, between roles, between chapters. Don't rush to fill the space with a new identity or structure just to relieve the discomfort. Sit in the chrysalis, let the old dissolve. Trust that the new will emerge in its own time. These transitions also teach about non-attachment to roles and identities. You were a busy parent, and now your children are grown. You were a working professional, and now you're retired. You were young, and now you're aging. Who are you when these roles fall away? The Buddha would say, you are awareness itself. You are the space in which all roles and identities arise and pass. Transitions remind you not to over-identify with any particular role, because all roles are temporary. This doesn't make them meaningless, it makes them fluid, flexible, part of the natural flow of life. Collective detours, finally. Let's address detours that aren't just personal, but collective. Pandemics, economic recessions, political upheaval, environmental crises, wars. These affect entire communities or societies, and they present unique challenges. The Buddha taught about the interconnection of all beings. When collective detours occur, they remind you viscerally that you're not separate, that what affects the whole affects you, that your well-being and others' well-being are intimately connected. This can be disturbing. You can't just fix your individual situation when the whole system is in crisis, but it can also be unifying. You're all in this together. Collective detours often bring out the both worst and the best in humanity. You see selfishness and hoarding, but you also see incredible generosity and solidarity. You see fear and scapegoating, but you also see courage and compassion. The detour is revealing what's always been there, the full range of human capacity. For your own practice during collective detours, the Buddha's teachings on the Brahma Viharas, the four immeasurables, are particularly relevant. Metta, loving kindness. Can you maintain goodwill toward all beings, even when everyone is scared and resources are scarce? Karuna, compassion. Can you feel for others' suffering without being overwhelmed by it? Mudita, sympathetic joy. Can you still find joy in others' good fortune, in moments of beauty, in acts of kindness, even in dark times? Upekkha, equanimity. Can you remain balanced and grounded even when everything around you is unstable?
Chapter 11. Living as someone who trusts the process.
Now let's talk about what life actually looks like when you've internalized these teachings, when trusting the process isn't just an idea you're trying to believe, but a lived reality you're embodying. What shifts? How do you move through the world differently? You become less reactive and more responsive. When detours arise, you don't immediately panic or collapse. You've trained yourself to pause, to breathe, to get grounded before responding. You've learned the difference between reacting from fear and responding from wisdom. This doesn't mean you don't feel fear or disappointment. You absolutely do. But you don't let those emotions dictate your actions. You feel them, acknowledge them, and then ask, given what's actually happening, what's the wise response? This ability to pause is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. In that pause, in that space between stimulus and response, freedom lives. You're no longer a puppet of circumstances, immediately reacting to everything that happens. You're a conscious being choosing how to engage with what arises. You hold plans lightly. You still make plans, of course you do. Plans are useful, but you no longer cling to them desperately. You hold them as possibilities rather than as certainties. You're prepared to adjust, to adapt, to release plans that are no longer working. This flexibility makes you much more resilient. When plans change, you're disappointed but not devastated. You can pivot quickly because you're not rigidly attached to one specific outcome. You trust that if this path closes, another will open. People who trust the process often describe themselves as tightly committed and loosely attached. They're fully committed to their values, their intentions, their effort, but they're loosely attached to specific outcomes, timelines, and methods. This combination creates both direction and flexibility. You find peace in uncertainty. Perhaps the biggest shift is that uncertainty no longer terrifies you the way it once did. You've walked through enough detours to know that you can handle not knowing. You've proven to yourself that you're creative, resilient, and resourceful enough to navigate unexpected territory. This doesn't mean you prefer uncertainty or that you actively seek it out. It means you're not thrown into existential crisis every time life becomes unpredictable. You've made peace with the fundamental uncertainty of existence. You understand that security comes not from controlling all variables, but from trusting your capacity to work with whatever arises. This shift is profoundly liberating. So much human suffering comes from the futile attempt to create certainty in an uncertain universe. When you release that impossible quest, when you accept uncertainty as a given, you stop fighting reality. And in that acceptance, you find a deeper peace than you could ever find through control. You become more compassionate. Having walked through your own detours, having experienced your own struggles, you naturally become more understanding of others' struggles. You're less judgmental because you know how hard it can be. You're more willing to help because you remember what it felt like to need help. This compassion extends to yourself as well. You're gentler with your own imperfections, more patient with your own process. You've stopped demanding that you should be further along than you are. You trust your own timing. The Buddha taught that wisdom and compassion develop together. As you become wiser through working with your detours, you simultaneously become more compassionate. You can't truly understand the human condition without feeling moved by it. You live more in the present. When you trust the process, you stop living so much in the past, ruminating on what went wrong, or the future, worrying about what might go wrong. You're more present because you're not wasting energy fighting with reality or trying to control what you can't control. This presence is the greatest gift you can give to any moment, any person, any experience. When you're truly here, life becomes richer, deeper, more vivid. You notice what you would have missed before. You appreciate what you would have taken for granted. The Buddha taught that the present moment is the only moment when awakening is possible. Past and future exist only as thoughts in the present.
When you're truly present, you're touching the timeless, the eternal, the sacred, whatever you want to call that dimension beyond the temporal flow. You become a source of stability for others. When you've developed trust in the process, when you're grounded in Buddhist wisdom, you become like a mountain in a storm. The storm is still happening, life is still bringing challenges, but you're not being blown around by every gust of wind. Others notice this quality in you. They seek you out during their own storms because your stability helps them find their own ground. You become, whether formally or informally, a teacher, a guide, a source of wisdom for those who are where you once were. This isn't about being perfect or having it all figured out. It's about being authentic, vulnerable, and grounded. It's about sharing what you've learned from your detours rather than pretending you never had any.